Older people end up in hospital for lots of different reasons. Sometimes because they can't cope at home anymore, they have a fall or they have extra care needs that they're struggling with. Sometimes they have a crisis and they don't know what else to do, so they call 999 and end up in hospital that way. Sometimes overnight, there just isn't a service available. Sometimes families can't cope. I think lots of different reasons.
Okay. Do you think how many of those people do you think actually need to be there?
I guess occasionally in times of a crisis, if it's a severe infection or sort of injury, then maybe hospital is appropriate. But I think a lot of the times it can be managed at home by putting extra care, by getting therapists, nurses in to manage that person at home a lot better.
Okay. And why do you think that's not happening?
I think part of it is knowing what service is available. If a patient phones 999, I'm not sure that they always get directed to the district nursing service or to the out of hours DN service if that's available. I'm not sure they always do that. I think sometimes there's a lot of pressure from families we can't manage this anymore, they need to go to hospital, they need to go somewhere. I think if families aren't supported properly. I think it's also incredibly difficult with an older person if they don't know, if the professional doesn't know them, they don't know what their normal is. They don't know that maybe they're actually always confused and the confusion's slightly worse, but that's their normal environment, and it's incredibly difficult if you're faced with somebody you don't know, thinking actually, does this person really need to go to hospital? And maybe some people are on the side of caution, that we don't know. I know as a nurse, when I go to somebody that I don't know, I rely on the DN notes and, System 1 notes to work out if this is a normal thing for them, if they've always lived like that. But I think if somebody calls for help, it's incredibly difficult to know if you're the professional who doesn't normally see them, to know what their normal is. I think when people go into hospital, they can get stuck there, and they might spend a lot longer in hospital than maybe was needed to treat the reason they went in the first place. Whether that's that they go in for one thing, and again, because there's no sort of clear plan of what their normal is, that suddenly becomes a much bigger risk for the hospital staff, maybe to have somebody who maybe lives on their own with carers 2 or 3 times a day, who would struggle to manage their food, struggle to mobilise. That might be their normal, and there might be all sorts of things in place to manage that at home. But if somebody goes to A&E or onto a ward, that treatment for then that one problem suddenly becomes treatment for the holistic, the whole issue, the whole person and all their issues, when maybe all the other issues are being managed okay at home, but they get stuck in hospital, rather than that whatever's going on to manage that staying in place, and then or having been put right back into place immediately. They can come out as soon as their treatment is. They've been diagnosed and treated for whatever reason they went in.
What do you think the answer is?
I think, from my point of view, to speed up discharge, I think getting people in, getting them treated, having close links to the hospital and the community, having links between the DN teams who know this person and the hospital, know what their normal is, having that link in hospital, that we can phone up the ward and tell them all this, but we don't have any authority there. So it might be that having more liaison with the ward, having more liaison with discharge planning, that from the community point of view, that could maybe be the answer. Also, I think maybe having a pathway for those people who are at high risk of admission, that they go into hospital, get diagnosed, get treated and come right back out again. That identifying them before they ever get to hospital, that if they arrive at the hospital, this patient is at high risk of admission, that there's all sorts of things, these things are in place when they go home. So get them in, treat them with, say, IV antibiotics for 24 hours and get them back out again. I think from a district nursing point of view, one of the big things they could do is get more care available. That can be quite difficult for us if somebody goes off their feet or becomes very unwell, trying to get social care in to help them with the day-to-day tasks, to help them with meals and with personal hygiene and using the toilet. That's very difficult to get in place quickly. There's not always that resource, and there's not always the capacity to get that quickly. And actually we could, as nurses, we could do a lot of that admission avoidance if we had that capacity to get that care in quickly.